I want to start by talking about the present and talking about Meadham Kirchhoff as it is today, because obviously you guys have had so much success recently and you're sort of so much in the limelight at the moment. And I just wanted to ask how that's felt for you guys, how that's been.
I don't know if I noticed that we're in the limelight, unless we're in a situation like this when there's a camera on us. I don't know.
Well, how does it feel to, I don't know, to be honest with you, it's not something that we sort of like
think about
to analyse. You know, we've been doing this for 10 years and it feels kind of the same since we first started somehow. There's a nice and, you know, lovely interest and complimentary press and everything else, but we really try to kind of stay out of it as much as we can.
When you say out of it, do you mean you tend to sort of, do you read reviews of your shows? Do you look at the kind of coverage you're getting, or do you try and really distance yourself from that part of fashion?
I think I distance myself from fashion generally, but obviously I can't help but read the reviews of the shows. Like the days after the shows, I'm pretty much like Googling constantly. I wish I didn't. Sometimes it's not really good for one's brain to think about, I don't think, but I don't know. It's just it's not something that when you're involved with it that I think about really. The attention that we get. Sometimes I suppose it's created more pressure than there used to be, to an extent. But most of the pressure is kind of internal anyway.
We've talked a little bit about sort of when you started, but I'd like to go back to that even more and ask sort of your very earliest memories of fashion. Obviously it might be different for the both of you. What was the point where that initial interest in fashion or design grew from? Did that come very early?
Yeah, in terms of actual fashion, I'm not sure, but definitely from like really early childhood I was really interested in aesthetics generally, and in dresses and kind of ideas of beauty and glamour. I think I became interested in fashion when I was I think I was about 11 via I drew all the time when I was little. All I did was draw like women in dresses, basically, and then I saw the Gautier drawings for the Blonde Ambition costumes, and it educated me about fashion in a very basic way. It made me realise that could actually be my job, because I don't think I'd ever really had any particular ambition. That's the wrong phrasing, but like I don't think there was any particular expectation for me to. I was never clever at school. From an early age, it was obvious that I was never going to be able to be clever, and I think there wasn't much hope for me to go to university and become like a interesting, clever person. And then I realised that was a job that I could actually think about doing. And then from then on, I used to buy Vogue all the time when I was like 11 and 12 and 13. And I learned about Westwood, and I learned about punk via Westwood to an extent. But mostly, I've always been really interested in, I think I've always really liked clothes a lot, and I've always really liked women's clothes. I don't really like men's clothes much.
Is that a similar story or a different one?
Who, mine?
Yeah.
When I was really little, I really wanted to be a vet, and then I always had an interest in fashion, but in a way similar to Edward, I didn't really realise that it could actually be a career or a job up until I was about, 12 or so, and then I grew up in West Africa, and always used to go and buy fabrics and whatever else, and I used to go to the street tailors and get my own clothes made. I used to basically give them a drawing and get them to make me clothes that I would wear to school and stuff. I think that I don't really know where it spun from. I mean, Gaultier was the first person who, again, made me realise that I was really into fashion and that I really wanted to do something in it.
What was it about Gaultier that you both found so intriguing? Because you both mentioned that as a
Gaultier?
Yeah.
Well, Madonna initially, to be honest. I don't know, what he did was kind of amazing. Not it's not something I think about anymore, but I think for a young brain to see somebody being so imaginative and whatever.
And kind of alternative somehow, when in the early 90s, I mean, I think that it was sort of the only, well, for me in France anyway, that was certainly the only person that I was aware of who was doing something completely different. It was a completely different concept of beauty. It was a completely different concept of doing fashion shows. I remember the winter '94 when he had he held a
the Jews.
No, that was the one that he had with the open casting. I don't know whether it was specifically Jewish or not, but it was the one where he had Bjork and Rossi de Palma and every other model was street cast, and he held an open casting in a shop on Rue Vivienne. And I was really into the idea that there was someone who was presenting something different and who was interested in not conforming to ideas of what clothing should be, what it should be inspired by, and
how you should wear it, who you should wear it,
and the fact that also what I really liked about it is by the time I was living in France in a small town, in my small town you could go and buy Gaultier Junior pieces, and it was something that I could go and buy. Do you know what I mean? It was slightly more expensive than the other stuff that I was buying, but if I saved up enough money, I could have access to it.
I want to talk to you a bit about your education, because obviously you had those early influences, but the point where you sort of developed your own approach to fashion, was that when because you both went to Central St Martin's, was that when you were there?
No, probably before. It was all I did. I just used to one after the other, for most of my life, up until I went to St Martin's. That's when I stopped actually doing anything because I wanted to anymore. When I was at St Martin's, what I was doing was excessively one-dimensional. It was entirely black and white and almost minimal, basically. No, I think I developed a certain amount of my thing way before then. I really feel like I stopped developing when I was 15.
What were you making when you were 15? What was your aesthetic?
I wasn't actually making anything. When I was 15, I was just drawing. Maybe I was beginning to paint at that point as well. But basically I was drawing. I didn't really make anything. My aesthetic was, in many ways, much as it is now, it evolved around Hull and all those girls, and my room was covered in Hello Kitty and Courtney and Love Hearts wrappers and pictures of Marilyn.
So how did you go from that to minimalism and back again?
The minimalism was just, the minimalism we can blame Joy Division for, I think, a little bit. I don't really know what happened there, to be honest. I think mostly it was, I was never a minimalist. It wasn't exactly minimalism, but it was always just
black and white.
There was no surface decoration or anything. That was partly 90s shame, to be honest. In the 90s we all got taught that everything had to be old, crap and ugly. And so I think I had a bit of glitter shame, and also because I literally did not technically know how to do anything at all. I think that lack of knowledge and confidence sort of created the necessity for things not to actually be too fancy in a way, because I had to just try and concentrate on making that a collar and a sleeve of a shirt and really, really basic things. I just had to sort of be quite basic, I think.
even today, do you draw a lot of inspiration from music? Because you've mentioned Courtney Love, obviously, and you mentioned Madonna.
I never stop mentioning Courtney, do I?
Courtney Love. But you've said she's not a muse. I've read that in an interview.
No, I don't have a muse. I'm a bit offended by the concept of a muse. I'm looking at you. Yeah, a muse is a reductive state, I think. No, I mean, she taught me everything. Yeah, totally, everything comes from music. Most everything.
Does that tie to how you run your shows? Because I think there is something, you guys definitely have a very interesting way of doing your shows. Like, the show seems to be a very important, like, event perhaps is the wrong word, but more
I think it is an event.
Yeah, it definitely seems integral to what you're doing, and you seem to make a lot of it, whereas for some other labels the show is merely just kind of a number of exits on a catwalk, whereas for you it seems a much more kind of a homogenous thing about what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think a show is like a concert in my head. I mean, I think if you go to see a concert and the gig is bad, it gives you a bad impression of the singer or the group that you're going to see. And I think it's the same thing. I think that you do need to give people a performance, and you do need to give people your heart, you know. And,
well,
and
just
really
like I just think if people are going to come there and sit there and watch something, then I feel like I really want to give them something to watch and to remember.
Yeah.
Because you've looked a lot at sort of countercultures or counter movements. So, for example, like punk aesthetics that we talked about before when you mentioned Westwood, but also things like the Riot Girl movement. Is that idea of kind of counterculture and deviance perhaps is not the right word, but rebellion, being outside of what other people are doing, outside of the mainstream. Why is that so intriguing and interesting?
I don't know whether it's intriguing or interesting to us. I mean, I think that we both are quite contrary marrieds in a way, and I think that exactly it's totally intrinsic to us. I mean, and I don't think that, you know, we are, I don't want to say mainstream, but, you know, we're not really interested in pleasing everybody, I guess. It's more interesting to us to sort of please ourselves, you know, in the process of, and to laugh about the whole thing somehow, because, you know, I think that somehow this industry that we work in is quite ridiculous at points. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you know, everyone says it, but, you know, I think that, I don't know, like, we're not trying to be revolutionary or like, you know, arms on or... Yeah, no, but like, you know, what I'm trying to say is we're not trying to be political. That's
well, you are sometimes. You've talked a lot about politics.
Yeah, I have talked a lot about politics, but I don't make it a mission to make Meadham Kirchhoff like a fucking, you know, be all and end all of like what fashion should be. I mean, I think that, you know, there's plenty of space for all of us to kind of exist in, you know, within this industry. I think that what Oscar de la Renta does, or what Armani or, I don't know, Ralph Lauren do, I think is very valid and very important. But I think that, you know, it's stupid to say that people like us shouldn't exist within the fashion industry because we decide to do things differently. Do you know what I mean?
But subculture, most of it relates back again what we were talking about earlier with music. It relates mostly to that, I think. And rebellion is important. I just think it's important to generally be a bit rebellious and to react against what is around you and all the shit that we live in.